I'm glad to be here. This is my first time in Australia. You heard a little bit about me. I'm a prosthetist and an occupational therapist. Kind of weird, but just how life led me down a path to do both of those. And now that you know a little bit about me and the other Nathan, I just kind of want to feel out how many of you have fit an iLim product ever in the past 5 years, 6 years since we've been around. Good. And of those people, how many have it been in the past year or 2 years, would you say? A few of you? Okay. Well, this is a great opportunity because, you know, we have people that have some experience, but we also have a large group of you who maybe this is your first experience with our products. So I'll try to do my best to do a grand overview and kind of explain what's possible and what we can do with Touch Solutions now that we're part of Össur. You should have received some handouts that are going to have some information based on what we're showing you here on the screen in front of you. And if you only remember one thing I tell you while I'm here, it's that this information is all available via a website. And that website is actually what you're going to see. There's no PowerPoint presentation. Every video, every picture, all the information that you need is going to be available after you leave the workshop. So I think that's really helpful. It's a lot of information, really hard to absorb all of it in one little session. So this training website, and if you don't have those handouts, it's www.touchbionics.com/training. So touchbionics.com/training. And when you type in that website, what you're going to be greeted with is what you're seeing on the screen here. We break up the training suite into iLim hands and iDigits. iLim hands are our full hand product for amputee levels through the wrist or more proximal, and then iDigits is a partial hand solution. We'll talk more about each one of those. But to kick things off, we're going to start with the iLim hand, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that iLim hand icon. And once you click on that, either one of those, you're going to be greeted with this stage training approach. And with new and advanced technology, it's really important to introduce things in stages. And for those of you maybe my age who grew up watching Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi-san, right, taught Daniel to wax on, wax off before he fought. It's the same sort of approach. There's some basic fundamental things that a user has to master before you introduce the more advanced technology. Otherwise, you're going to either overwhelm them or it's just not going to sink in as well if you don't have them master each of those basic fundamental things. So that's the stage training approach. And then on the right-hand side, there's some resources as well. And we're going to start over there with introduction. We're going to watch a video of an iLim quantum wearer. Her name is Claudia Breidbach, and she's from Germany. So you'll hear some talking over top of what she's saying because I don't understand it. And there should be some audio with this if it's possible. Well, I will be your audio then. I will walk you through it. It's quite all right. So she obviously lives a very active life. We don't start off people jumping out of planes with prosthetic hands. But what you're going to see in this video is her doing, yeah. She's going to be using all the advanced features that a hand can do. She's going to tell you or show you what's possible with the hand. And this first demonstration here, she's going to use gesture control, which means she sustains an open signal and then just moves the hand slightly to get into a grip. She could certainly perform a task like cutting this cucumber without being in a mode or a grip or a feature, but it's going to make it a lot easier to perform a task, just like you and I would, you know, curl some fingers underneath to get them out of the way when you're working with a smaller object. The other thing you'll notice are the tomatoes. You know, you have to be a little more delicate with that, otherwise you're going to have ketchup all over the place or tomato sauce squished around. So she has the control, you know, the ability to control how much force she applies to something. Here's another grip, really ideal for utensils. So she's going to use it for a knife. There we go. And another thing you'll notice in these videos too, she's always using the prosthesis as the helper hand, right? She's using her sound hand to do most of the dexterity.
It's a wonderful feeling,
including like unpeeling this cheese.
Life with two hands. It's awesome, actually.
Which they're delicious. If you've ever had one, you'll know. Do you guys eat eggs like that? Soft boiled? No? So here she's using her app to get into a grip, use a spray bottle to clean up her little mess that she made. We also have grip chips. That's this little gizmo on the table. She's going to move her hand over that grip chip and it'll put the hand into a index point so that she can use a keyboard to type. We also have the ability to have the fingers have a compliant grip or conform to the shape of the object being held. And we also have touch screen capabilities in the index finger on our newer products as well. She's wearing the extra small hand. She's very petite. All right, I'm going to be the guy that when you're watching a video with somebody or a DVD or something, you pause it and you be like, you got to watch this part. All right, so what she's doing here, just so I can explain what's happening, is on our website we have a bunch of QR codes of different grips that users have submitted. So as a user makes a custom grip, maybe they make something for a unique tool at work, or of course we get all sorts of sign language gestures that we don't put on the website. But the ones that are helpful, we put them on our website, and that allows the user to connect the app and scan the QR code and add one of those grips to their hand. So what she's going to do here is find the grip that she wants. In this case, it's chopsticks. She's connected to her hand with her mobile app, and she's going to scan that QR code so that she has access to the chopsticks. Bing. And that's it. So we cut to the next feed, and she's feeding a random stranger some sushi.
As a child, every night I prayed to God that He would send me another hand. And every morning I woke up just the same. But for the last 4 years, I'm finally living the active life I've always wanted to live, a life with two hands. And now I can thank God for listening to my prayer.
So like I said, that's a good overview, kind of see what's capable in one of our hands, because she's a really proficient user. Let's talk about the ILM range. So this is the full hand that we're starting with. What's unique, or what's some features of that hand? And I don't know about you, but as a kid, I would always take stuff apart. Didn't always get it back together. But I think to fully understand our product, you need to take one of the fingers apart, because that's where the technology is. So this is a finger, actually an original finger from the 2007 hand, first edition. And I've made it so all the screws are missing that you can actually disassemble the whole finger. So I'm going to pass this around. I want this to be very interactive. If you guys have questions as I go over something, please raise your hand and ask. I don't want this to be me just talking. Let's interact and discuss. So if you look at a finger, we've got a tip that is removable and then what we call a proximal motor sleeve. And with that removed, what you see inside here is a Maxon motor. It spins really, really fast. And next to it is a transmission, or the engineers call it a gearbox. It just takes that speed and amplifies it into some force that spins a bevel gear in the back. And that bevel gear spins a worm wheel. So as the motor spins, it either extends or flexes the finger. So as we pass this around, kind of get a feel for the technology that's in this. It's pretty neat. Interesting note, this technology was invented and was going to be used for children during the thalidomide epidemic. But at the time, the motors and electronic parts and pieces were not miniaturized enough to even make it available for kids. It wasn't until 2007 that it became commercially available, and at this time we still really recommend it for post-pubescent fitting. So that's the original, and then I'm going to pass around the latest, and you'll notice some redesigns. We have an aluminum base, titanium base on the finger as well. This one is not meant to be taken apart. If you do take it apart, please put it back together if you brought a toolkit or something. But same concept, still has that tip and a motor sleeve with that transmission and the gearbox, and then that aluminum base for more structure and robustness. All right, so why is that important? Well, in the 50s, when the first myoelectric hands came out, if you wanted a myoelectric hand, you had to get a hand that had one powerful motor in the palm, it would drive these three fingers together, and these two were not powered, right? They were just along for the ride. You've seen those hands, right? They're still available today. I'm not saying it's a bad hand. It was just limited because it had one motor and limited articulation points. So when the ILM hand came out, it was the first hand that had multiple articulations. And if you look at that finger, or any of the fingers on the hands, we have two articulation points in the finger. One is kind of similar to what would be like an IP joint on your hand, interphalangeal, and then an MCP joint. Those two joints and motors in each finger make it a lot different than that 1950s style hand in that you can stall fingers. And what we mean by that is as the motor comes in contact, or a finger comes in contact with an object, that motor is going to sense that resistance and it'll stop moving. So we're not relying on one motor to drive it. You can stall multiple fingers, you can stall the thumb. And that stall out ability gives us what we call compliant grip. So it's going to conform to the shape of whatever it's holding. So as the fingers hit a coffee cup or my hand, you're shaking somebody's hand, it's going to stop moving and take the shape of that object. So that's kind of cool. And that's just baked into it. There's nothing you have to do or set up. It's just a part of having a motor in each finger. Thumb rotation. This wasn't possible with those early hands because we had one motor and it drove the thumb, index, and middle together for that pinch. So there was no way to get out of anything other than a tripod pinch. With a motor in each finger, we can actually manually move this thumb, and we actually have a powered thumb rotation now too, but we can move the thumb to different positions because in the human hand, we have key pinch or a lateral pinch, we have tip to tip, and we have tripod pinch. And because of that rotation, you can achieve each of those pinches of the human hand with that rotation of the thumb. With the latest hands too, we've also made it bigger, faster, stronger. We've boosted the speed and power by 30%. Just means that it's going to open and close quicker than the original designs if it's been a while since you've seen one. We have different grips and modes and features that the hand can go into, and a lot of that has grown based on users' feedback and different grips that they wanted to be able to access in the hand. And then control options. There's different ways to get into the grips, and we'll talk about how a user can access those grips, and Nathan will demonstrate some of the ways he can do that as well. The hand's available in 4 different sizes. Tall, venti, grande, no, that's wrong, sorry. Extra small, small, medium, and large. We sell mostly smalls and extra smalls in the States. I would imagine that'd be the same here. If you've got somebody that has a larger hand, maybe a bear paw for a hand, that is where that large is helpful. It definitely, I have a guy that I work with that has a hand that, he could palm a basketball. That's the kind of hand we're talking about. It would be more appropriate to have a large hand there. And then the way you get into grips with our hands are illustrated with this icon that you'll see throughout the presentation, throughout the training suite, in your notes as well. And they illustrate the different ways that a user like Nathan can access grips. The first in the upper left is gesture control. Gesture control is what Claudia was using, where she sustains an open signal, a finger twitches, and then she moves. The hand's going to enter a grip. It's really easy, really simple. You get 4 different directions of motion to get 4 different grips. Another way that a user can access grips is with muscle control, and that means that they can do something with their muscle inputs. Maybe it's 2 quick opens, or they co-contract. That's an example of how you could access grips as well. Quick grips or app control, that means you can use iOS apps. You can use an Apple Watch to access grips. You've got tons of options to enter grips that way. And then finally, a grip chip. And the grip chip is, if you remember from the video, it was that little coin-looking device that put the hand into index point for Claudia so she could use her keyboard. So let's talk about the 3 different versions of hands that we offer and what capabilities they have and how you might be selective on which hand you would order. And let's start with the base model. The ILM Access, and let me go back to, those 4 sizes are available in any of these hands. So you've got the size, but then you've got the model as well. So if you're looking at the base model, ILM Access, we have a low-priced option if reimbursement is a challenge or maybe goals are limited for the client or the person going to be wearing it. You have manual thumb rotation in an ILM Access, so the user can always just move the thumb manually for those 3 different pinches that we talked about. You have something called auto grasp, which is a drop prevention feature. Auto grasp works by watching the user's open signals, and when it sees a spurious open signal, you'll see the hand briefly open but then reclose. And it's meant to instill confidence. If you're emptying a dishwasher or moving something from one plane to another, you might accidentally fire an open signal, and normally you drop that. But with auto grasp, it helps prevent the user from dropping that object. And then pulsing. Pulsing is that extra grip force when you need it. I'll hold it up to my lip. So it's a ratcheting of the motors. That motor that's spinning, it actually pulses and gets a little bit more grip force, a little more oomph when you need it. And then with this base model hand, you have two ways that you can get into grips. And that's with app control, using an iPhone, iPod, iPad, and with muscle control. So the user can do something with their muscles to activate grips with an ILM Access hand. Moving up from that, we have an ILM Ultra. Has everything the Access hand has, but it adds powered thumb rotation. And that powered thumb rotation means that the thumb will move to the position required for the grip, or it will allow the user to electronically rotate that thumb instead of having to manually move it each time. So that's definitely a nice feature that's added there, especially when you're dealing with bilateral things. You've got something in each hand, and you want to move the thumb. Now you're trying to figure out a way to rotate that thumb without a motor. Can be a little challenging. We had a few more grips as well because of that thumb rotation, and we improved the efficiency of the pulsing. That pulsing sound that you hear with the ILM Access hand is just slightly different than an Ultra. The Ultra is more efficient in the way it does that. We've seen that extend the battery life for the user so they can take advantage of that more. And then finally, the latest product that we launched and has even more features, and that's the ILM Quantum. And that's what you'll see, what I'm using here. That's what Nathan's using as well. It has everything the other hands have, plus it adds gesture control, and that was the ability to move to get into a grip. Proximity control means that you can use grip chips to get into grips. And you can see we have a lot more different grip options, including 12 custom grips that you can make. You can DIY your own grip to your liking with an ILM Quantum. Questions about those different versions of the hand? Don't be bashful. Yes? Sure. I like to tell people the ILM Access is like your car with the manual windows, right? It's still great. You can get the windows up and down. You can do a lot with it. We're just adding features as we move up in different models. Pardon?
We haven't really had access to it in this driver.
Oh.
You do know. Yeah.
Great. It's a great option. In the States, we've seen it a lot with private pay individuals or reimbursement challenges where you want to provide multi-articulating technology, but the reimbursement's just not there. So it's a really great option to get them that kind of technology, all those features that we're talking about. Any other questions? All right, who's an appropriate candidate? For the ILM hand, the level of loss should be through the wrist or more proximal. We're compatible with every powered and body-powered elbow out there. So if you have a transhumeral or more proximal amputation level, you could still provide the multi-articulating technology with any version of those hands, the ILM Access, ILM Ultra, or ILM Quantum. It is intended for light to moderate usage. This is not for underwater welding or swinging a sledgehammer or anything heavy duty like that. The thing that makes multi-articulating technology great is that we have a lot of dexterity, but that also can make it susceptible to high impact and high torque forces that you want to try to avoid. It's obvious that you can still fly a plane with one, but yeah. And then we want the client to be motivated to use the prosthesis and have realistic expectations. And I know you guys know this, but I can't tell you how many people I've met that have seen something in Hollywood or our hand's been featured in a music video with Britney Spears punching through a plate glass window, not necessarily portrayed in the most realistic manner. The other thing I've seen is there's an episode of Hawaii Five-0, the new version, and there's a bilateral individual who's an assassin, and they can't find him because he's not leaving fingerprints anywhere. So he assembles the rifle, he shoots people, and then runs away, and they can't find him, right? So, all this to say that sometimes TV, the internet, your cousin Billy, can be misleading, right? Misleading information. So we really want them to have a good understanding of what this hand can do, how it works, and what's realistic. And then we really emphasize using a therapist when working with one of these devices, just because as they become more advanced, to really learn the features and capabilities of the product, you really have somebody that needs to take them through that training staged approach like we're going to talk about. And I'll show you a little bit of that with Nathan as well. Some research to support the use of a therapist working with one of these devices. Early therapy nearly doubles the rate of daily use. So you think about upper limb devices and the ability to go without it, right? We're symmetrical. We're made to be, we could be cut in half and still use half of the body, right? And now you provide a prosthesis that a user may or may not accept. Whereas with lower limb, even if the leg doesn't fit well, if I want to walk or ambulate, I'm going to continue to use it, try to use it, get it adjusted, right? With upper limb, not the case. And we want to avoid rejection whenever possible because we are made to be symmetrical. We don't want all the work being done on just the sound side. It's going to lead to repetitive trauma, whether that's carpal tunnel or shoulder injuries, whatever it might be. We've got to split the work between the two halves. And early therapy is going to double the rate of daily use, meaning they're going to have more longevity of that sound hand. And also, there's been research that supports the idea that it takes roughly 20 to 30 hours of skilled intervention to really master it. And as prosthetists, that's not really our forte. We don't really get paid to train somebody on how to use that extensively, and that's where a therapist can be very helpful. Back to education and managing client expectations. If you have somebody that you're not sure if they understand the capabilities of the hand, you want to ask them open-ended questions. What do you understand about the product? What would be your main uses for the hand? Typically when you ask them something like that, it's, well, I want to get my hand back, or go back to doing what I did before. Well, those are great, but then you need to dial in a little bit more. What things are you having trouble doing now? And if it's been a long time since their accident, or maybe it's a congenital anomaly, they've never experienced two-handedness. In that case, that's when I would encourage them to carry a little activity notebook. Every time they stick an object under their arm to open it, or use their teeth to open a package, or something like that, write that down. Those are the kind of things that you can address and see if the iLim hand is going to be appropriate for that. They also have to understand that this does take patience, effort, time, and training. If you were to pick up a new instrument or a new sport, you're not going to naturally be LeBron James or be able to play a concerto right away, right? It takes lots of practice, and that has to be emphasized as well. We also say the iLim hand is not a replacement for the human hand. It's amazing technology, but it is a tool. And sometimes with upper limb, you're going to have multiple terminal devices to be able to get that person through everyday life. This might be the hand that they use for 80% of their activities, but they might need a different device for something, a task-specific device. Or maybe there's another device that they need as well. Also, you have to consider that the prosthesis does add weight, appearance, fit, the noise. The noise, I don't know, doesn't typically bother people, but sometimes when you hear that motor running, maybe you're picking up a hymnal in church or somewhere quiet, maybe that would bother the person. They need to make sure that, or you need to make sure that they understand that. And then goal setting, won't go into this in too much detail, but to set a good goal, we have to have it realistic, achievable, have a time scale associated with it. Questions about that? Does everybody know a local therapist that, or rehab facility that you could potentially use if you had an upper limb client? I'm seeing a few nods, that's good. All right, let's talk about componentry. When you order the hand, you can order it with 4 different attachment points. The standard is going to be a QWD, or a quick wrist disconnect. That's that industry ball bearing standard connection that allows you to manually pronate and supinate the hand and remove it to insert another terminal device in the same prosthesis. That's the default. However, sometimes you don't have that much room. You have a wrist disarticulation level, or I don't know, maybe there's weight restrictions, whatever it might be. There is a wrist disarticulation version. That's the one in the upper right. That has that little basket that gets laminated into the prosthetic frame. What you give up with that version is pronation and supination. So with that wrist disarticulation version, you get a shorter build height, but you lose pronation supination. 2 other options are the threaded stud. That was my nickname in high school. Just kidding, I wasn't. Threaded stud is just your endoskeletal style connection to decrease weight. Still allows you to pronate and supinate. However, you cannot quickly disconnect the hand. So that's something to consider. But I'm talking to a room that we know that prosthetics is all give and take, right? You got to give something up to get something. And then the last one on there, the lower right, is a friction wrist. Adds just under an inch of build height, but allows pronation and supination. This is a great option if you have a long transradial or even a wrist disarticulation level where you can't preserve that anatomical pronation and supination within the prosthesis. Use that friction wrist, they'll still be able to pronate and supinate. You'll really help avoid that compensatory motion that would be necessary from the shoulder and elbow and torso. Another option when you're ordering is a flexion wrist. The flexion wrist can be locked in 5 different positions, or it can be left unlocked for activities. I'll just switch it out real quick. When it's unlocked, it kind of acts as a shock absorber, where it's able to absorb forces. So when you're picking up something with a little more weight, that weight can be transmitted to the wrist. Nice for crossing your arms. We've got some pictures here on this next page. It does add some length and weight. Another reason that people really seem to like it is something, and this seems so simple, but I've heard this over and over, is just something like signing your name, or you're at a different table height, maybe at a bank, or you're working at a kitchen table, cutting vegetables or something like that. Just being able to push and have the wrist conform to whatever you're holding or supporting is a big deal. But then there is also a sliding mechanism that allows you to lock it in different positions as well. Has anybody ever broken their wrist? So you can appreciate wrist motion. Very helpful, especially for bilateral individuals. Think about everything you do at midline. Very importantly, even toileting, hygiene. Think about that. I burnt my hand this summer, and I had to switch to my non-dominant hand to do that, and that is not easy. But you also need a lot of that wrist flexion to be able to achieve that. So for bilateral individuals, being able to reach midline with a lot less body English to do that. And then batteries, we recommend internal batteries, and that's because we have 6 motors in the Quantum, 5 motors in the Access, that are pulling power. And your best, most efficient storage of power is going to be with one of our internal batteries. These batteries come in 1,300 or 2,000 milliamp hours. Just know that means how big is the gas tank. 1,300 is smaller size, but it's just going to hold less energy. Most people can make it through a day's use with the 1,300 milliamp hour battery. The 2,000 milliamp hour battery is helpful for if you have other componentry. Maybe you're fitting a coap system and you need to power that coap system and the hand and a wrist, or maybe just a wrist and the hand. I'd recommend you go up to that 2,000 milliamp hour so you have a little bit more longevity out of the system. Another option, we have external batteries. They are what we call power pack. I'll be quite honest, I'm not a huge fan of them because you can see the form factor that they take up. You do need 2 of them, and they're only 800 milliamp hour. The advantage is that you can switch these out and you don't have to take the prosthesis off and charge them. So it is an option. If you have somebody that maybe they're away from a good place to charge a system, or they can't be without the hand for any period of time, this is a good option as well. And then electrodes, we have 2 different styles. We have a compact electrode that is that standard rectangular shape with the contact points, filtering, amplification, all happening in that one little rectangle, little Lego brick. And then we also have remote electrodes, and remote electrodes move the filtering and amplification downstream from where the contact is on the skin. And the advantage there is if you have somebody that perspires a lot, with this kind of electrode, if you've ever fit this kind of electrode on anybody, I don't care who it is, even if they're a petite little female, eventually perspiration and moisture gets back in there and can corrode and ruin that connection, so you have to replace it. The remote electrodes are immune to that because you're only dealing with contact points. You don't have any circuitry right up against the skin. So it's a nice option. Questions about the componentry? Got to get you guys some coffee. Maybe it'll be morning tea that'll get you going. All right, the last thing is coverings. We have a few different options for putting a cover on the hand itself. And the first option is an iLim Active skin. And the iLim Active you can think of as kind of being like yoga pants, very form-fitting, a lot of flexibility, So great function, but it's very robotic looking. Some people don't like that. So if they're willing to go with function, this is what you want to lean towards. This is form-fitting to the hand itself. That comes in two different versions. There's an iLim Active and then an iLim Active TS. TS just means it has a touchscreen capability incorporated into it. It's available in black or clear. The second one that I'm going to pass around has that TS added to it. So great function, but you're compromising a little bit on looks if you want it to look more hand-like. We move up to the iLim Skin Contour. And the iLim Skin Contour takes out some of the humps and bumps around the hand and smooths it out. So these are more like maybe your loose-fitting jeans. You still got great function, but you've got some bulking of material, right? And it's not quite as form-fitting, but it looks a little nicer. It's more rounded. Also available in black or clear. And then if you want skin tones, then we move up to what we call an iLim Skin Natural. This is available in 18 different colors. Now we have silicone nails incorporated into them, wrinkles over the back of the fingers, and you can, like I said, get that in 1 through 18 as far as colors go. But now you're adding another layer, right? So it's starting to become a little less functional because there's more material there. So motion's going to be hindered somewhat. The other thing you'll notice too, look at the iLim Active, how there's a nice flat spot on the fingertips themselves. So you get great precision, you get a pad-to-pad prehension, whereas with the Contour and the Natural, it's more of a spherical shape coming together to hold on to objects. So you're giving up a little bit of that function to achieve that more realistic look. And then for people that want ultimate in realism, that's where we offer the iLim Skin Match. And it's called the Match because it matches the sound side. We have artists in New York that actually paint the silicone to match freckles, veins, tattoos, whatever it might be from the sound side, so it matches perfectly with the sound side. These are like your snow pants. So you're not going to have as good of motion, right? You've got more material there, so it's not quite as functional, but it really does look amazing. Any questions? That last one we talked about is painted in New York, like I was saying. And another option, these aren't for the hand, but these are living skin gloves that can be painted for partial hand amputation levels, actually any level. You could do an endoskeletal setup and they can do a skin that can go up the entire arm to cover it. But this will give you an idea of some of the level of detail that they can provide when they make an object or a hand. Everything from a finger with a vinyl nail that can be painted. The paint is actually applied on the inside of the silicone, so it can't be worn off. This is an example of one that started off as that hollow shell, and they've begun painting on this side, so you can kind of see that. And then this one is a finished device, has some armatures in it, some rigidity to help you kind of pre-flex or pre-bend those fingers ever so slightly. And this individual has their thumb but was missing these 4 fingers, so there's an opening for the thumb to slide through to give you an idea of what that product looks like. They do amazing work. Questions so far? All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to have Nathan run through a few of these stage 1 features and benefits, these things that you want to teach somebody. So even though he's a proficient user, we're going to start from scratch, and the things that we would show him if this was his first time being introduced to the technology. And stage 1, what we cover in stage 1 when you're teaching a new user is things like picking up objects. How do they do that? And each one of these is a clickable hyperlink that we can actually look at videos, pictures, examples. So what that video shows is that compliant grip. The fingers are going to conform to the shape of the object. You can see the pinky finger curl underneath the glass. Makes it really helpful, nice little stable base for the glass. And then we start with unilateral tasks, meaning their sound hand isn't used. They're just using the prosthesis to grab an object, move it in space, and then release the object. And what you're looking for here is life doesn't exist just in this little bubble in front of us. We're constantly reaching. Maybe you're in the car reaching for something on the driver's, oh, you'll be this way for you guys, the passenger seat, or you're in the kitchen working in cabinets, high and low. We need to make sure that the prosthesis is functional in all those different positions. So that's a task to take the user through those positions. And then a functional example, I don't know that I'd jump right to peeling a cucumber with a sharp object on a new hand, but it shows you an example of that compliant grip conforming to the shape of the object that she's holding. Another thing that we show somebody in stage 1 is stalling digits, the ability to stop a finger from moving. And if you remember, that's all possible because we have a motor in each finger. And we can stop multiple fingers. For instance, if you want to get your hand through a coat sleeve, you could stop four of the fingers, have the thumb close, and now you're in a low profile position to put on a coat. Make sure that they understand the amount of force that's required to hold that digit or digits in that functional position. A nice little test to do that is have them stall individually each finger so they get a feel for that. And why that might be functional is you can put the hand in all sorts of functional positions without using any setups or grips. In this example, she just stalls the index finger and has the hand in a position that she can type on a keyboard. Any programming, again, she's just stalling a digit. Does that make sense? Another way people put it is they call it blocking a finger. I kind of like that too. You're blocking the motion, so you're just blocking it as you provide a close signal. And then positioning the thumb. We want the user to understand that that thumb has all sorts of rotation capabilities, especially if they are coming out of a hand that was that tripod pinch. This is a new concept for them. With that standard hand, they had to compensate with that tripod pinch whenever they're performing tasks. Now you want to teach them to rotate that thumb based on what they're holding or picking up. The other thing I've noticed with thumb rotation is just a slight shift of the thumb can make a huge difference on some objects as well. It's not an all or nothing thing. This thumb can rotate. You can put it in any different position that you might want. And this is another functional example, just training that user where to rotate that thumb into different positions so they understand how that affects function. Then it's nice to put little tasks in front of them, have them open the lid to this container, so the thumb has to be rotated into what I would call opposition. But then also rotate it all the way to the side for a lateral pinch for something like a tea bag or sugar pack or something like that. And then this little jar that you see of jam, that's one of those examples where if she rotates the thumb all the way into the palm, it would hit the index and middle fingers before it would close on the object. So she rotates the thumb just ever so slightly to the side so that she can grab that jar. And then the last thing in stage 1 that you're teaching a user is varying the grip force. The first thing is proportional control. A good test of that, or a good way to practice that, is with something delicate like a little shot solo cup. Soft and flexible, something that if they crush it, it's not the end of the world, but they can really work on controlling the speed at which they close the device. It's just like the gas pedal in your car. Proportional control is the same thing. When you fire the muscle hard and strong, the hand moves fast. If you just lightly contract the muscle, you get that slow motion. So when you're pulling out of a parking space, you want to just lightly tap on the gas pedal, right? A functional example of that is everything from hard-boiled eggs to grape tomatoes, or I've even seen people use the prosthesis to just pull grapes off of the stem. It's a good example where you just need enough force to hold that, but not enough so it slips. And styrofoam cups, it's another good way to kind of test that out, being able to hold something delicate, how's their control of the force and the speed. She's just going to town on these fruits and veggies here. All right, so the opposite, that was those delicate objects, right, where you just want to lightly contract on something, but there are times where you need a little more oomph. And VariGrip is that extra oomph when you need that extra grip force. And some of the things you want to talk about, well, in this video, for instance, is how it's activated. And VariGrip is activated by sustaining a close signal. So if they just simply close on an object, that's not going to activate that extra oomph. They have to sustain that close signal until you hear the VariGrip kick in. And a way to demonstrate that is with one of those soft, squishy balls, or maybe like a softer sponge, something like that, where they can see how that VariGrip affects the force that they're applying. Functional example of that, any bag of chips, or Ziploc bags, or tying your shoes. Anytime you need a little just more force on the object that you're holding can be very helpful. I had a user that he said VariGrip was the biggest thing for him for using VariGrip was actually pulling his pants up. So after you go to the bathroom, it just seemed like if you didn't activate VariGrip, things would slip. You always had trouble with that. So VariGrip was huge for him. He absolutely loved it because of that. Seems so simple, but good stuff. And then at the bottom of the stage, each of these stages we have a bunch of videos and therapy ideas. So if you're working with a therapist, you could share a link to this to show them the different stage training approaches that you could do. And we're going to do these with Nathan here in real time. So these cones are a great way to have them moving something in space, right, and not dropping it, making sure they can relax their signals in all those different planes of motion, and then unstacking them as well. If you've ever had a user that kind of supports their arm as they're trying to control it, that's a telltale sign that maybe they're working harder than they have to, or are they losing contact or inability to support that weight and relax their muscle signals in space when they're using it. So this is a good way to test that out. And here we're just varying the height and position of the object. In this one, we're just using that soft ball. It's a good way to start with proportional control, because if he crushes the foam ball, it's not the end of the world, right? It's not going to hurt anything. But he can get a feel for how much pressure he applies and then vary the height without either opening or squishing it even more. And then pulling him back as well. He's a well-dressed end user. Usually they don't wear a sports coat during therapy there. And then the cups. This is the example that I was telling you earlier. They're going to do a close-up here, and you'll actually see the hand squish a little bit more than it should. And that's just feedback for him to know that he needs to back off on that force. There. Squished it a little bit, opened up. This prosthesis, the hand eventually becomes really a part of the user, and it's all about interfacing and becoming one with that hand. I grew up on a farm, and we would operate heavy machinery. And if you've ever done that yourself, or you know somebody that has, people that are very proficient at that machine becomes an extension of them, right? Especially like a backhoe or something like that. It's almost like fluid when they use it. You put me behind a backhoe, and it's all over the place. In the same way, you're looking at fluidity when they're performing these tasks. Is there a hesitation when they go to let go of something, that they're waiting, that it's not a fluid motion? And these are good examples of that fluidity and improving that fluidity. Here's some VariGrip examples. It's time to party. You're opening up your vodka bottle. You want to make sure that you can get a good grip around it as you twist that top off. Another big one is holding a phone. That compliant grip is really helpful for that. It's going to conform to the shape of your phone so that they can use the hand, or you could use the touchscreen to activate the phone as well. But that's a big one. You can show them in stage 1 how those fingers will conform or comply to the shape of the phone. What you'll notice about this picture is that that pinky finger is curled underneath the jar. So as they push down on the lid to open it, it provides some extra force as well. Those are some nice tricks to show them. A new user too, maybe they're going to a family reunion and they've got their buffet plate and they've got a drink as well. The prosthesis, they might be a little hesitant because what if I open, what if I drop it, what if I get embarrassed about that? Having that finger curl underneath their beverage of choice is a great way to instill some confidence, because even if they open slightly, they're still going to have that ledge or that platform for that pinky finger to support it. So it's a nice little thing to show them early on to hold objects like that, especially cylindrical objects like this jar, if you're opening something with force, or a can of Coke or something like that. And then we also look at where we put the forces of the hand. You and I would not want to carry a laundry basket or something with weight on the tips of our fingers, or a grocery bag, right? That would hurt. We'd feel that. The hand would hurt too, but they're not going to know that the hand hurts. So we start off by showing them the strongest points of the hand, and that's typically going to be right in the base of the finger, right in the palm. And things with handles like your grocery bags or maybe a purse, pocketbook, that kind of thing, making sure that they understand to put that weight into the base of the finger when they're holding it, and not to hold it maybe like in this palm down position where the weight would be on the tips. And then the last thing is utensils. We did a study with a university in our area. We asked people, since their amputation, what was the most difficult thing for them to do, but most important to them? So it had to be difficult, and they had to care about it. And number 1 on the list was cutting food. And maybe that's just Americans, that we're big carnivores and we like to eat stuff, but most people like to be able to eat and be independent with that. So one of the things that you want to show somebody in stage 1 is how you can hold a utensil with the compliant grip, with the thumb rotation, to get that hand in different positions to achieve those functional goals.